is so realistic that the people living inside it have no idea that their lives are being simulated. You can tell when Charlie Brooker's run out of ideas when a Black Mirror episode ends with the shock revelation that everything was happening in a computer program all along. But many scientists think that this scenario is highly likely. If you think about how fast computer technology has advanced in the past 30 or 40 years, it seems like creating a simulation that's indistinguishable from reality is not such a far-fetched prospect. Philosopher Nick Bostrom theorizes that a sufficiently advanced civilization would run computer simulations of its evolutionary history. If this were true, they would probably run billions of such simulations, trying to gather as much data as possible, and this means that the chances that we are not in one of these simulations right now is a 1,000,000,000 likelihood. Statistically, unless humanity wipes itself out before it reaches that technological level, it's much more likely than not that we are all part of a computer program. There may even be some scientific evidence for this. A physicist named James Gates claims to have found error-correcting code very similar to a computer program embedded in his equations on particle supersymmetry. It seems that the universe has a program built into itself to correct any errors. The problem with proving the simulation theory is that a computer program would probably contain a failsafe to stop itself being discovered. If a scientist devised a way of proving that reality was an illusion, then the simulation could simply show him different results. The only real proof we get is when the program malfunctions. There are many eyewitness accounts of people experiencing these reality glitches. Most of it is unprovable hearsay or can be explained in some other way, but there are others that are more compelling. One example of these reality glitches is the Mandela effect. When a large group of people remember an event happening, but it turns out never to have happened. I'm pretty sure every YouTuber in the universe has talked about the Mandela effect at some point, so I don't need to go too deep into it, but there are a few possible explanations for the Mandela effect. Memory is a strange thing, and false memories are possible. But when hundreds of people have the same false memory, it becomes harder to explain. Not impossible though. I'm sure most of you remember this scene from The Jungle Book, where Baloo is dancing around in a grass skirt and a coconut shell bra. Well, what if I told you he never did wear a coconut bra, yet many people remember it very clearly? Most likely people are misremembering the coconut mask he wears in this scene, and mixing it up with a coconut bra from some other film. This may go some way to explain why lots of people can misremember the same event. In fact, you might not even have remembered the bra at all, but I just implanted that memory into your mind by telling you to picture it. The one that gets me is the Fruit of the Loom logo. This is how I remember their logo to look, but apparently this cornucopia horn was never in the image. You can go back through the archives of Fruit of the Loom's logo changes, and not once does that cornucopia appear. Yet hundreds of people, including myself, remember it very clearly, and there's various news articles referencing the cornucopia. So what happened? I can't think of any other image that might have implanted a false memory of the logo in my head. Many people cite the album art on the Frank West Fruit of the Loom album as a source of the false memory, but I'm sure I've never seen that album before in my life. And the artist who drew that album cover says himself that he based it on the Fruit of the Loom logo because he preferred it before they removed the cornucopia. So if we're not just misremembering it, what other explanations are there? Perhaps there was a counterfeit brand with a slightly altered logo? Perhaps Fruit of the Loom really did use the cornucopia in their logo for a while, and almost all clothing with that image has since disappeared, and the company themselves have forgotten all about it. Perhaps, if you believe the multiverse theory, we all slipped into a different timeline where the logo was just fruit, but some of us retained the memory of the cornucopia universe. The other possibility is that there was a glitch in the simulation. Perhaps the same error-correcting code that James Gates discovered. Maybe at some point Fruit of the Loom changed their logo and removed the horn, and the program accidentally error-corrected it out of history as well. Perhaps it saves on processing power not to have a bunch of different examples of the logo throughout history. It might seem like a small change, but it could be that the program makes millions of such changes to reality every day, and we only notice a small portion of them. Think of it as the universe defragmenting itself. And sometimes the program makes bigger changes. A small change in a logo might go unnoticed by most people, but what about when a whole town fails to render? One strange case is that of Doveland, Wisconsin. Apparently Doveland was a medium-sized thriving town with hundreds of inhabitants, and sometime in the 90s it simply ceased to exist. It's not as if the town vanished one night, leaving a gaping hole where it once stood and hundreds of missing people. An event like that would surely have caused great alarm. In fact, the town subtly erased itself from history, and from most people's memories. Those that did remember Doveland recalled it like a person remembering a forgotten dream, a hazy memory of a town they once visited and had forgotten all about. Apparently some people even had postcards and t-shirts that they bought in Doveland as souvenirs, although I've yet to see any photos of these artifacts online. The only photo I've seen is this one. It was supposedly taken in Doveland, although I can't see anything in the photo to suggest the location, so unless someone manages to identify the restaurant or the people in this picture, then we only have a random internet rumour to go off. I do like how the image is slightly faded though. If you listen to my spooky bedtime stories video, there was a tale in there about a couple who took a photo of an old cottage, but when they tried to find the cottage again a few days later, they found a post office standing in the same place. When they developed the photo, it was weirdly faded along one side, just like this one. Perhaps this is what happens when you have a photograph of something that has glitched itself out of existence. Sometimes a whole country can disappear. The most famous story comes from 1954, when a man arrived in Tokyo's Haneda airport and handed over his passport at customs. He stated that he was from the country of Taured and would be staying for a few days for business. The passport indeed showed that he was from Taured, and there were stamps to show that he had travelled to various countries before. But there was one problem. Taured doesn't exist. The man was taken into custody and questioned by Japanese police. He told them that Taured had existed for thousands of years, and it was a small country located between France and Spain. The investigators assumed he meant Andorra and showed him a map of Europe to see if he could point it out. Upon looking at the map, the man became angry, claiming that there was no such place as Andorra because Taured had existed in the same place for thousands of years. They called the company where he said he had a business meeting to attend the following day, but they said they'd never heard of him. They then called the hotel where the man from Taured had reserved the room, but no records of his reservation could be found. It was as if the man had slipped into a parallel dimension, or perhaps another simulation. Until the authorities could get to the bottom of the mystery, the man was taken to a hotel room where 2 guards were posted outside the door to make sure he didn't escape. His papers and passports were confiscated. During the night, however, the man completely vanished. Not only that, but the papers and passports that they'd confiscated also disappeared. Just like Doveland, it was as if he'd never existed at all. Now, I'm sure certain details of this story have been embellished over the years, but it's hard to find a definitive explanation as to what actually happened to the man from Taured. I've seen a few posts saying that it was debunked, but they don't actually post any links to anyone debunking it. There is this post that a lot of people seem to copy-paste. It seems to explain that Taured was actually a real place. As far as I can tell, a lot of the information in this post is fictional. I can't find any historical records to actually back it up. There is some real historical stuff sprinkled in there to make it seem legit, but as for the existence of Taured, I'm still none the wiser. Googling most of these details seem to only lead back to the same posts. People often cite it as if it explains the whole Man from Taured affair, but I remain unconvinced. There's other very similar cases from history of people claiming to be from countries that never existed. 100 years before the Man from Taured case, another man was found wandering lost in northeast Germany. He claimed to be from the country of Laxaria in the Sacrian continent, and naturally both of these places appear on no map. He said that he had travelled thousands of miles over vast oceans, and he was looking for his brother who he had lost in a shipwreck. However, he had no recollection of how he had reached land, or how he came to be wandering lost in Germany. I'm not sure what happened to him after this. He was taken in for questioning, but there's no other information. It seems that that part of the story is lost to history. Like the Man from Taured, it remains an enigmatic mystery. The last idea I want to look at is that of the NPC. For those that don't know, an NPC is a character in a video game that isn't being controlled by another human being. It's a character programmed with a simple routine and repetitive dialogue to make the fictional world seem populated. I know it's become a bit of a meme in recent years to call someone an NPC, but could there actually be NPCs wandering among us? The idea does raise some sinister prospects. Is everyone a thinking, feeling consciousness, or are some of us simply following pre-programmed routines in order to provide the illusion of a world inhabited with free-thinking individuals? Obviously, if this is a simulation, then technically we're all NPCs, but some of us might operate on a lower level of consciousness than others. The simulation might not need to program full consciousness into every single person. Think about all the thousands of people who inhabit the world around you. Can you be sure that they're all autonomous human beings? Some of them could just be following a simple repetitive program that gives the illusion of consciousness. There's a few stories of people encountering NPCs, but most of these are just anecdotal. There's a few good videos of people exhibiting NPC-like behaviour, but I think in a lot of these cases, drugs might be the more likely explanation. It's creepy to think that these empty shell characters might be walking among us though. I worked in retail for many years, and NPCs are as good an explanation as any for some of the behaviour that I've seen customers exhibiting. There's some fairly amusing pictures online if you Google glitch in the Matrix or reality glitch. Most of these are just people who look kinda similar or are wearing the same clothes who happen to be in the same place at the same time. Interesting coincidences, but not exactly proof of the Matrix. There is at least one team of people trying to prove the simulation hypothesis. At least they claim to be. There was a Kickstarter campaign started by Tom Campbell which proposed an experiment based on his paper titled Testing the Simulation Theory. I'm not going to pretend I understand any of this. Apparently they needed money for equipment to test to see if reality was in fact a simulation. They more than smashed their Kickstarter target back in 2018, but 2 years later it seems the backers are still waiting for updates. He posted a video to Facebook in March to say that they were still working on it. A few people in the comments don't seem to be too happy with the whole thing. Maybe a lot of people just got took for a ride, who knows. I'll keep an eye on the project to see if he ever does deliver the experiments as promised. I'm sure these kind of scientific experiments do take a lot of time to get right, so I'm not going to write it off as a scam just yet. I'm just going to keep my eye on it. It seems interesting, but there is a lot of scams on Kickstarter, so you can never be too sure. If reality is proved to be a simulation, then what happens when we do prove it? Maybe the point of the simulation is to test how long it takes us to realise that the world is an illusion, at which point the simulation will be terminated. The economist Robin Hanson says that if we are interested in self-preservation, we should strive to be as interesting and entertaining as possible. It figures that whoever is controlling the program and is running a whole load of other simulations simultaneously would periodically switch off any simulations that weren't interesting enough, or at least send some disasters their way to liven things up. Anyway, let me know what you think of this idea in the comments. Are we in a computer program? Does it even really matter? Thank you to all those who are supporting my work. It's good to know that people are enjoying the content,